Hi, I'm Lisa Singer. I am the Senior Director Event Programming at MediaPost, and this is Brand Insider BTS, where I get to pull back the curtain on some of the most influential women marketers today. And with me is Bridget Sponsky. She is the Executive Director of Brand and Sponsorship Marketing at Ally. Hey, Bridget.
Hi, Lisa. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
So what's that in the background there?
This is our truth mark. So if you can't tell, so I work for Ally. I am the executive director of brand and sponsorship marketing at Ally. And when we launched the brand, we also launched it very purposefully with our A that sort of represents the ally in Ally, and it's called our truth mark. So anything that you would ever see inside of the A would be representative of the truth. So this is sort of our mark in the world.
So your head is a little bit inside, so I know everything you say is going to be the truth.
It always is.
All
I'm
right,
an
that's
open
okay.
book.
I now have it that it has to be the case. So I know everyone else is usually lying to me. So now we know. All right.
Never.
Yeah. Well, actually, I do, as you said, and you are with Ally. And Ally, they've done an amazing thing. They've made a 50-50 pledge, meaning that 50% of the media that you spend on men, then you have to do the same amount, or the amount of media you spend on men, you have to do the same amount with women. So it's that 50-50 split. So which I think is amazing, and I really, applaud Ally for doing that. But I want to turn it, because this is BTS, so it's not about the brand. So I want to turn it to you and talking about sports. So has sports been a part of your life, like growing up? Like, what has it meant to you in any way, and how has that impacted you?
Yeah, I owe a lot of me to sports and my participation in sports throughout my entire life. I grew up playing softball. I started on the co-ed teams, T-ball co-ed before I moved into women's softball, and then played into my high school years, even into college intramural wise. And then I continued even playing after college in various like rec leagues and with some of the companies and the advertising agencies that I worked for. So softball is just something I feel like that's been in my blood. I grew up with it. I had two brothers, my dad. I had lots of family that played baseball. But I also grew up doing dance and gymnastics, and that really led me also to participate and do competitive cheer. And I started competitive cheer sort of at the middle school level and went on in the high school level to be a three-time state championship state champion here in Michigan. I was part of that sort of group that paved the way for cheer to become recognized as a sport by the MHSAA. So I was sort of in that first group of women who were sort of trailblazing, I think, the path for cheerleading. And actually, next week, my alma mater is going to hopefully go for their 21st state championship, which would be absolutely amazing. But sports has been a huge part of my life. I think it's taught me more than any one thing has ever really taught me. I think in cheer, we had a fight tooth and nail for everything. We weren't allowed in the weight room because the weight room was for the boys. So the girls couldn't be in there. And it really wasn't until later on, in talking with my coach, finding out, why we did the workout routine we did, which was a lot of partner resistance routines and plyometrics in the bleachers. And it was just because of that, because we didn't have access to some of that stuff. So, really learning how to get creative and have that drive and that passion to kind of fuel that championship mentality has sort of always been part of what I grew up with.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I feel that I grew up a tomboy, and it was I sports saved really. I was a troublemaker until I found sports, and I'm talking kindergarten, like
Yeah, yeah.
I was so young. But it's just, and it really does. It gives you a focus, and then especially being part of team sports, I think it gives you a confidence that maybe we could be lacking in if with other things. It's just I really do like. I highly recommend sports. What I love is that you also did the gymnastics dance. I did not. So I'm the clod. Like, okay, so like I did the track and the softball and the soccer and all that. So I have no grades. Like, whereas you have both. So that's like amazing. So that's just such a well-rounded mixture. So
I always
really,
said I think it's what led me into advertising because even in sports, I felt like I had the balance of art and science, right? Like the
yeah,
art and the sport of everything. And but it really it does. It teaches you how to win and lose with grace, and it teaches you confidence and how to work as a team and how to depend on each other and what your particular role is in the sport that you play or the competition that you're in. And it's one of those things that really does teach you how to be a part of something bigger than yourself as an individual.
yeah, I agree. And the fact, I mean, you even just talking about that, boys got the better equipment, whatever, and we're seeing that change. There still needs to be a lot of work. I'm not saying, but I
Mhm.
then, as you're doing the 50-50 pledge, and more brands are doing those kind of things where they're trying
Yeah.
to put shine a light on women's sports. And I mean, we've been seeing so much with basketball and, the breaking all the records and just all of this great stuff happening with women. So, I mean, what does that make you feel like, because as you said, when you were younger, maybe you didn't realize it at the time, but you now do. And now you're seeing it's again, there needs to be more done, but we're seeing those strides.
Yeah, it's really interesting because when you don't talk about it, it doesn't change. It's just like anything else. And I think the more that we've talked about women's equity in sport, and the more that it's being something that is a topic of conversation, the more that people are realizing how important that is for women's development, for leadership development. There is a well-known stat that talks about how 94% of C-suite leaders that are women were part of sports in their early lives. And so it really does have that impact. And I think the more that we talk about it, the more people are paying attention and the more change is going to happen. And we've seen that not just over the last 2 years since our 50-50 media equity pledge, but even in the last 30 years,
Mhm.
since I've been, a high school kid playing sports.
Yeah, no, I think it's awesome. So I totally agree. Well, all right. So sports sort of it led you into that kind of, okay, maybe gave you that confidence and led you, I don't know if led you into what your career has become, but I want to hear about that. Like when you were in college and you're playing sports too, but you're also thinking, okay, what do I want to be? And was this what you envisioned? Like talk about what you were envisioning at that time and the path you took to get to where you are.
So I think I'm maybe one of those anomalies. I kind of knew that I wanted to do advertising when I was in high school.
Really?
I love to write. I love to write. And I actually wanted to be a songwriter. But the path sort of led me into this world of advertising because I was able to take some advertising courses in my high school curriculum, which I know sometimes is unusual. And I think that they're starting to offer that a little bit more. I see it here and there, especially with two daughters and in the school system right now. But I started taking those courses and I was just always drawn to it. And I do think it was that like the convergence of art and science. It was the ability to be able to use creativity to make money in a way, for me personally anyway. So I was just always drawn to the industry. And I think it was because anytime I would see an ad on TV or maybe look through a magazine, there was this pull that I felt that advertising was able to evoke these emotions in
Mm.
me that were like meaningful or impacted me in some way, shape, or form. And I wanted to figure out like how could I use my creativity to do that too. So, I kind of knew that path was something I was going to take even as early as like 16, 17 years old. So
Wow.
I went to Michigan State University because they did have such an incredible advertising program. And so that's where I really, kind of solidified, I think, that passion and what kind of propelled me into this industry.
Yeah, no, and that is unusual. I think I have spoken with women who did know that, but it's funny when you say you were a good writer or you like to write, and
Mhm.
so that like for me, I loved writing, so I thought of journalism. You know what I mean? So it's just funny that you would think because with advertising, in which there is so much writing, but you don't necessarily go there, I guess. So I mean, so think of like young person starting out, or even young Bridget. Like, what do you tell that person who is maybe interested a little bit in getting to be where you are, but what's that one thing? Because as you said, it's not your path is a little different than others, but what do you think that person needs? What do you wish you maybe knew that might have made your path a little bit easier or just enlightened you a little bit more?
Yeah. Well, I think, I wanted to be a copywriter, and that was really hard to break into. So I feel like I had to be more flexible in my career path. Like I had to think about if maybe I'm not going to be a copywriter, but how can I break into the industry in a unique way that still lets me be creative? So giving yourself that ability to be flexible, and also remembering to keep your search broad. Like what I always felt like, especially in college, and I mean, I graduated college in the early 2000s. So at that time, a lot of the companies that would come in were advertising agencies because I was an advertising major. But to be able to think beyond that and to be able to think about the brands or the companies that you as an individual respect or love or admire and seek those opportunities out. Because if you think about, Ally, even in the company that I'm in today, we're a financial services company. So we may or may not be at a career fair that is for advertising majors or communications majors. We might be more in the finance arena, but yet we have an entire marketing organization that is dedicated to the brand and creating impact in society. And there's so much opportunity out there. So, don't get stuck on one path, but just make sure that you're kind of keeping your eyes open, I think would probably be one of the biggest things to think about as you're kind of coming out of college into your early career.
Yeah, and be open to doing other things first. As you said, maybe copywriting was such a competitive thing to get into, but you got in other ways, or like don't always, as keep it on that one thing because you could just
Mhm.
keep getting, going against the wall, hitting the wall, hitting the wall. Whereas if
Yeah.
maybe you go in the side door and then you can work into whatever other position you have an interest in.
Yeah, and take chances because when you're young and you're starting out, that's your time to take chances and figure it out, try different things. I
Mhm.
tried a million different things on the agency side, and that's not uncommon to hop around, but tried a million different areas of advertising and kind of figured out my niche, I think once and for all, and that lied in sponsorship marketing, and that's, and brand marketing. And that's really where I think I've thrived, was kind of figuring out where my strengths were along, my career journey. So I would just say, don't do things that make you unhappy, but do things that are hard, because, hard doesn't always equal unhappy. Hard is good. It's good to be uncomfortable, and it's good to push yourself and figure it out.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Well, speaking of hard, has there been a challenge that you've experienced that just seemed, like it almost got like you couldn't go any further? And then, of course, you did. Is there a time when that happened for you?
I mean, I feel like in life, there's a lot of challenges that come up. And I think a lot of the times when you're faced with them, they're not necessarily in your control. And I think you've got to figure out how you overcome those challenges by figuring out what in there can you control. Because there's no sense in trying to control the things that you can't. And I think that, once I kind of figured out how do I make sure that I'm controlling the things that I can control, and I have a mindset that is going to make sure that I am setting myself up for the next right thing. That's when things, I think, started to click and change for me over time. So, I just think that that's something important to keep in mind every day, because every day you're going to be faced with some sort of challenge. And some of them are going to be a lot harder than others, and some of them are going to last for a lot longer than others are going to last. But I think you have to just remember that, life is a beautiful thing, and it's hard, but it's absolutely beautiful if you let it be, and if you make sure that you're thinking about life in the way where you're controlling your own destiny.
Yeah, no, and it almost is. I mean, and I might be saying this wrong, but part of it is look at it smaller in a sense. I don't mean smaller, like you said, some challenges are going to be really huge, some are small, but even those huge challenges, if you look at what you control and you
Mhm.
look at it in just that aspect, as opposed to, I think we get overwhelmed, and then that makes us almost feel like we can't do anything. We get, we freeze, as
Yeah.
opposed to if you just sort of focus on this little thing, and then you kind of work your way through. I mean, I know that's not always an easy thing to do, but if it's about keeping things in more perspective, I guess.
No, I'm completely aligned. I think that's exactly what it is. It's like, what's the next right thing when you're faced with something and you're faced with a challenge or you're faced with something out of the ordinary, to think about it as like, what is the next right thing? And then the next right thing, and then the next right thing. And it makes it so much easier to get through.
Yeah, just little steps and just
Mhm.
go through there. No, I totally agree. Well, I always have to use something from, we've been talking about Ally regardless, but the tagline is do it right. So, what does that, and I want to get away from the work side and more the personal side. What does do it right mean to you? Is it doing it perfectly? Is it doing it just to get it done? Is it doing, like what is do it right?
So to me, do it right is sort of the golden rule. Like, do unto others as you want them to have done to you. And I think that's just how I live my life every day, is how do I make sure that I make people feel good? How do I make sure that I make people know that they're enough? How do I make sure that no matter what decision I make, it's for the right reasons, that I'm making a positive impact and there's more positive than negative. There's more benefit than risk. That I'm doing things that actually matter. And that I'm not doing things that are just being said, but that they're actually being done. When I make a promise, I make a promise. And when I make a commitment, I make a commitment. And I always follow through with it. And to me, like, that's what doing it right means. And showing up for the people that matter. And I think sometimes we get bogged down in a lot of the daily minutia, and showing up, whether it's for your kids or your family or your friends or whoever is important to you in your life, matters more than anything else in this entire world.
Yeah. Well, and I'm curious though, because you're a mom, you're
Mhm.
work for a major corporation, obviously that has a lot of responsibilities and time. And then how do you balance, not balance, I'm not asking balance family and life, but then when people do want to, like friends that you want to be there for, you want to do something for, how do you then balance that? Are you able to say no? Are you overfilling your schedule? Like talk about that just in a day or a couple of days. Like what do you do for that?
I mean, for a long time, I was completely overfilling my schedule. I was saying yes to everything, and I was probably doing a lot of things that either maybe I didn't need to do or somebody else could have done, or maybe I could have made it easier on myself by getting a babysitter or having somebody else pick up my kid. But, I think at the end of the day, it was like I wasn't setting boundaries. And I think setting boundaries it's like underrated. I feel like that's changed my life. Setting boundaries has changed my life. It helps you to, I think, reprioritize what's important that particular day, because sometimes it's going to be something at work that is going to have to take a priority, because that's what life is. Or sometimes it's going to be your kid that has to take a priority, or sometimes it's going to be a parent or something else, or maybe you haven't gone shopping for groceries in a week and that's got to be your priority. But you've got to be able to set boundaries, because today is so much, it's so different today than it has been in the last 10 years with technology, because you can literally, as a human being, be on 24/7, whether that's like work life, personal life, it doesn't matter. If you don't set your boundaries, your brain will burn out. And I think, having learned how to do that and how to turn it off when I need to turn it off. And I think realize also that resting is productive. That's a really hard concept. I think it was hard for me to wrap my head around. And I think it's a really hard thing for a lot of women to wrap their heads around. And a lot of people in general to wrap their heads around. But that rest is important and it's productive. It's just as productive as going. That boundary setting has been incredibly important in the way that I've kind of increased not only productivity but effectiveness, and being there for everybody. Because I would show up at volleyball games or dance competitions, and I don't know that a lot of my friends outside of work realize the demanding job that I have, and the demands that life kind of has on me just as a person, even beyond work, and even beyond those, my kids' sports lives. And it is challenging, and it is hard, and I would burn out. And I think that that's just been a lesson that I think you learn as you get older, and you start to see what's important. It kind of goes hand in hand with talking about the challenges that you have to overcome. Sometimes those challenges are really important because it opens your eyes.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And well, so speaking of making rest time or time for yourself, what's a guilty obsession? When you just need to like have that bucket of ice cream or watch, stream a bunch of shows, and what is that for you?
Oh, well, it could be a number of things. I mean, honestly, I love working with my hands. So like I love to cook. I never have time to cook. So talking about boundaries on Sundays, I'm really trying to instill like Sunday night dinners with the kids and the family and my husband, because we typically it's like sit at the island and it's like make your own dinner night every single night.
Yeah.
So I love to cook when I can and finding new recipes. I love to clean and organize and like redecorate. I love all of that stuff. I just think that there's that like creative like fulfillment that I get from it. And it's also working with my hands. But yeah, I love to binge shows. I love to run. It's something I have to do every single day. I consider it, if I get a good run in, I mean, that's my win for the day. Clears my head. It completely changes my frame of mind. I'm a morning runner. I get up early, I get it done, and it like completely sets the tone for my day.
Wow. So you're very positive. You make me feel like it's my guilty pleasure watching Hallmark eating milk duds, with a glass of wine.
I do love drinking wine, and I'll tell you this too. I do love bourbon. I love
Oh, really?
learning about it. I love drinking it. I like tasting all different kinds of bourbon. I love the history of it. That's sort of been a side hobby, for me and my husband. So we get
Oh,
into it. We go down to Louisville quite a
that
bit.
makes you the cool chick. Like
Mhm.
that. Okay, you're gonna order the bourbon as opposed to wine or a vodka tonic or whatever it may be. So very
Takes a
cool.
little bit longer to drink than a glass of wine for me.
It
So
would, it would take me a lot longer. I can't do it. Everyone's like, oh, it's so smooth. They'll give me like a really like expensive taste. Just taste it, and I'm like,
yeah.
I taste it. It's like, yeah, I just don't have the taste buds for that.
I totally get it. You know what though? I didn't either. And what got me into it was learning the history of it. And once I started learning the history of it, where it came from, like that, it was interesting to me. And then it changed my mindset.
Wow. Well, maybe I'll do a little research on it and see if that can. I don't know if
Take
it's
a
gonna
trip
help,
to
but
take a trip to Louisville.
I can give it a shot. Yeah. All right. Well, so I have to ask in terms of we were talking a little bit about challenges and everything, but has there been maybe a failure? So not necessarily a challenge, but something that just didn't work, whatever it may be in your life, that it actually ended up redirecting you in a more positive way.
I mean, I think that goes back to like the boundary setting, because I really do. I consider that to be something that I felt like I wasn't just failing myself by not setting boundaries, but I was failing everybody else because I was trying to be everywhere at the same time. And I was never, ever living in the moment truly. Like I would be at a game or I'd be at a competition and I'd be on my phone or I'd be on my iPad or I'd be making a call, or I'd be at work and, I'm trying to figure out, did the kids get home? Did they get fed? Do I got, somebody coming to pick them up, or I've got to race home because I've got to do that today. Not saying like trying to do everything at one time. It didn't make life easy for anybody. And so I think that challenge of trying to set those boundaries and reprioritize and sort of have that plan at the beginning of the week, know where my focus is going to be, know where my feet are going to be, and be present in the moment and soak it in. I mean, that's what life is about, because I'll tell you, and maybe this is a little philosophical, but I get this way sometimes. Because I really do sometimes try to figure out the purpose of life. And I don't know if there is one. I think a lot of the times life just doesn't make sense because it's just life and you just have to do it. So you can't spend it feeling unhappy or not feeling good. You want to feel good. And every moment that you can control, try to feel as good as you possibly can. And I think a lot of that just starts with making sure that you're present in every single moment and enjoying it, because you're never going to get it back. And
Yeah.
that's the, I think the failure that I had to realize to kind of get to where my headspace is today.
Wow. So, and it's true. I mean, in you have two daughters you mentioned.
I have two daughters, yeah.
How old are they?
I have a freshman in high school and a fifth grader.
Okay. So one, what them seeing you, and I'm, as you said, you've sort of evolved to being more present now and being able to use your time better. But
Mhm.
that wasn't something that always was the case. But now they're seeing you thrive with it. They're seeing you, making your mistakes, but also doing well and being a working mom. And how do you feel like that's impacting them? Because, we always say kids emulate their parents as opposed to
Yeah.
do what they're told.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. So I've always been the mom that wants to expose my girls to everything. So I mean, I'll bring them when it's appropriate on work trips, on work events, so that they can physically see what I do. There's times that I've had my daughter kind of helping me behind the scenes as I was early on in my career, doing, merchandise tables and things like that, but just seeing it. And I also want them to meet my coworkers. I want them to meet my boss. I want them to know them. And I want them to almost have a relationship with them, because I feel like when you form bonds with the people that you work with in an environment like that, that's where the trust comes in, and that's when you start to take off. That's when you win as a team, right? I use a lot of sports references, but I just think it's important for people to know people as human beings, and I want my daughters to see that, because I want them to understand what a working environment can be, and that they have the chance to be able to impact, the future of how we work and the future of how we show up to work. But yeah, I bring them with me everywhere I can. They see me working at home when I'm working at home. Every time we drive downtown Detroit, they know where the Ally building is. They show their friends, they talk about it. And I see their pride in it, which is amazing to me, because it's not just pride in mom, but it's pride in where mom goes to work every day. And I love seeing that. It means that what I'm doing is working.
Yeah. Well, so do we have any budding marketing execs coming
I
in here?
I think we may. I definitely have a fifth grader who is like very business minded and also very creative.
Oh,
But my older one is, gosh, she's so well rounded. She's very musical, plays the guitar and sings and
right.
writes, and but she also plays a ton of sports. And I think they're both really driven. I see, a lot of the good stuff in
Mhm.
me got
Yeah,
to them, which makes me really, really happy.
that's wonderful. Yeah, no, I mean, the thing is, I think, as a mom where you are like, you're doing these things that they can watch. And so then I think that gives them room or freedom to say, I can do anything. I've spoken with people who maybe when they were starting out, they didn't see women in whatever it may be. Even what we're seeing with women and star basketball players. Maybe years ago, you would never have thought you're going to be the star basketball player. So I feel like by seeing them not only, I mean, so what do you feel as a brand? What's the responsibility to showcase those things? I mean, obviously with the 50-50, that's amazing. But in terms of from the little things that, whether it be more women, whether more diversity, more like, like sometimes people say, oh, brands should just stick to what they do. And then other brands, which we're here seeing more of, are doing it, but you need to do it authentically. Where's your take on on that?
No, you have to be brand. Brands are human beings in my mind. That's how I look at our brand. I look at Ally as it's a brand, it's a company, but it has the characteristics of a person. And if we are truly going to live by our mantra, do it right, we
Mhm.
have to do it right. We have to be there for our communities. I think, ensuring that we are a culture of inclusivity, a culture of belonging, making sure that everybody can see themselves in something else that feels bigger than themselves as an individual is extremely important. I think one of the things that makes it's so special for me to have 2 girls and be a working mom is I see the support that my girls give to me. So it's not just about me giving my girls support, they support me in what I do, and they get it, and they understand it, and they're my biggest cheerleaders, and I think that that is just it's such an important aspect, when you're talking about impact, and it's such an important result of seeing you in the potential of what you can be.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome because I do agree with that. But I think, as you said, it has to be within the organization as well. It can't be just you slap on like some spot,
No,
have a bunch of
culture
different.
drives everything. Culture drives everything, and it has to be embedded in who you are. And when we launched the Ally brand, that was our value proposition, was this customer-centric approach where the customer was always going to be first no matter what. We would sit in rooms and debate like things that people might think are silly little things, but it was all in the interest of doing it right by the customer. And so that mantra just continues to follow us in literally every single thing we do. We talk about deeds over words. So you'll never see us say something without doing it.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Well, I
Mhm.
want to, for the last question, just a little. What is something that really makes your day? Like that kind of. We all set goals, what we want to do within the next 10 years, in our life, next year, whatever it may be. But just that one goal for the day that's going to be like, okay, just do this and it's good.
I mean, outside of getting a good run in every day to clear my head, um, the little wins is, as long as I'm able to talk to my girls and get one bit of substance out of them in terms of how their day was, like that's a win for me. Because to me, that means that we've got the relationship, that we're open and that we're talking and that we're communicating and that our busy lives aren't getting the best of us. And so as long as I can talk to them every day and they can share something, really substantial with me that happened that day. That's what's important.
Yep. Well, I agree. That's awesome. Well, Bridget, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time with me today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thank you for watching. And please, if you have a woman brand marketer that you're so impressed with, you want to hear more about them, let me know, and I will do my best to pull back the curtain on them. Anyway, thanks for watching. And Bridget, thanks again.